like you say, I even allocating $10, £10 a day, a month, whatever, to just essentially stack your freedom.
Hats.
Randall, morning.
Morning. How you doing?
I'm struggling. I'm having a coffee. That's a great start. Let's go again, shall we, Brendan?
Why?
Because that's a complete dox straight away.
Oh, yeah. Not that bad at docs.
Yeah. You also want my mother's maiden name and my first animal, my first pet's name.
All right. You know what? No, we'll leave it.
Start.
We'll leave it, and I'll just cut what I said out because we didn't say anything else. All right.
Okay.
As anyone who listens to this knows, I am woefully bad at doxing.
You don't take your privacy seriously.
I mustn't. Anyway, it's episode 13.
It was 13.
Yeah. Lucky 13.
You're lucky that.
This morning we have Haggis Hoddle joining us. How are you, Haggis?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Excellent. I think Hats is a bit annoyed at the moment, but he'll get over it.
I'll get over it. We have outnumbered the Aussies. We have two Scottish guys.
I know. And you guys want to talk about sports, so
So you're completely. Yeah.
I'm gonna tune out. So over to you, Hats.
Okay. Well, let's not go straight there. Mate, so what's your? Let's just do the quick Bitcoin story if we can. Like, how have you found yourself owning some Bitcoin? Like, what's your story, and then we'll carry on after that.
Yeah. So my story for owning Bitcoin, I first heard of it probably 2015, roughly. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I totally had no idea what it was, what its purpose was. I thought, the trope of silly internet money, it's just some sort of plaything. It has no value whatsoever, and didn't really give it too much thought. And then the first time I actually bought it would be about 2017. Yep. But at that point, it was more not a buy of the whole, going down the rabbit hole, should I say. It was more just, let's just buy it and see what happens. I made a little bit of profit on it, and I actually ended up selling it. And I actually still have a record of that buy back in 2017. And I look at it and think, wow, why did I sell that? But
yeah, so you're talking pre-run up in 17.
Pre-run up 17, yeah. I think it was literally must have been very close to the run up in 17, where I bought it, and then realized I think I forgot about it, and then looked at it after the run up. I thought, holy, what's going on here? And decided, I really want this money, because I didn't really see it as the freedom coin that it is today. I just thought, let's just make a quick return on this and just get out as quickly as I can, because at that point I still thought, it's pretend, it's make believe, it's not backed by anything, this, that, the next thing.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question? In 2017, was capital gains tax relevant then, or
capital gains tax has always been relevant,
okay?
But it just depends whether, like,
but that was pre KYC or not?
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay.
So there were exchanges that had details, but I mean, early days. If you go back really early, it was mostly like miners and Satoshi or whatever. But okay. So capital gains tax has always been relevant. If you've, but it just depends. That's not really to do with us. That's to do with the tax authorities.
No, I just always assumed the early days of Bitcoin, when it was totally kind of underground, it was just people were trading and whatnot else, Silk Road and all that. Obviously.
If you're asking, is it the case that people bought and sold Bitcoin and doesn't pay capital gains? Yes, that's absolutely the case. But obviously the tax authorities weren't really interested back when it was worth $2.
Bugger all, yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
All right, sorry, Haggis. Carry on, mate.
I mean, like you said, with the tax and stuff like that, when I sold it, it was like nothing I had to worry about in terms of gains for paying tax. But it wasn't actually until fairly recently where I actually properly fell down the rabbit hole. One of my close friends, his on Twitter is at an average salmon. I don't know if either of you guys follow him, but he's another Scotsman, and he was brilliant, isn't it? He just goes by Salmon on Twitter, but he had been, bothering me. Right, you need to look at that. You need to really look at this, but what it's doing. And this was just post March 2020 crash after COVID happened. So I've not been really down the rabbit hole fairly long. That's probably about 18 months ago.
Yep.
So you'd been probably sort of mid-19, he'd been saying to me, you need to look into it. And it wasn't until sort of that COVID everything started happening with COVID, and I thought, right, let's look at this, let's see what it's all about. And then since then, your first time listening to, Tales from the Crypt, you mentioned Stefan Lavera loads of times on this podcast, and you just get engrossed in what Bitcoin is, what it can do, and what it plans to do, and how it's going to change the world. That's the long and short of it. It will change the world, and since then it was just totally hooked.
So how long would that process to get you to the feeling of feeling hooked? From I don't mean from the original process. I mean from when you after what you were saying, March 2020 time.
So sort of March 2020 time. I mean, all I would do with my time during that sort of the first lockdown period that we had, my entire day and night, even working life, because it was really quiet, was spent listening to Bitcoin podcasts, researching on Bitcoin Twitter, and really just forcing myself down the rabbit hole. Because once you get that first sort of little bit of information about Bitcoin, about it's fully decentralized, there's only going to be 21 million. It is really, the only two finite things we've got is what time on Bitcoin. At that point, I was thinking, right, this is something that is really worth looking for. And along with all the things that were going on in the world with COVID, your money losing value, that's when you were thinking, right, I'm really needing to start getting this cash into a more safer store of value, because you've seen in the news, America printing money, Bank of England, ECB. So you didn't need to be intelligent to realise that printing money is a bad thing. So I decided, well, I've got a little bit of savings in the bank. I'm going to need to store this wealth somehow, and came to the conclusion that Bitcoin was the best way to do that.
And that's quite interesting. You said with your work that you were able to sort of multitask with the like learning as well. Like, what was that, podcast predominantly? So you could kind of do your work and listen to podcasts or whatever it was. I'm the same.
Yeah, podcasts. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I say, TFTC, Stefan Lavera, Guy Swan, especially Guy Swan, the content that he posts about, he reads the articles is absolutely fantastic, and that was key to the learning process for me. Was literally spending my days, my working days, doing my regular job, and at the same time listening to podcast after podcast after podcast, and that was probably for a good few months. And then by the end of that, it was, you not say fully down the rabbit hole, because Bitcoin, you're always learning. There is always something new to know. But at that point, the conviction was building, and it was getting stronger every day.
Do you ever feel like I always feel like I've got another one to listen to. I don't get to the end of it in the sense of I'm not like I want to listen to more. It's really addictive, and I'm really interested in why it's so addictive, because I don't think it's just I'm going to get rich. I think it's way bigger than that. I think that's part of it. When people go, if I'm going to get rich, I should learn more about this. I completely. That's how a lot of people get hooked, but I don't. That's not how you stay hooked.
Yeah, but I think as Haggis was saying, it really is like the rabbit hole is a bottomless pit. So you constantly, there's something you're getting from everything you consume that's new. And sometimes you listen to a podcast and you're like, oh, I've heard all this before, but then there's usually always a little nugget or two that you just go, oh, there's a nice way that it's been framed. Or
even from like when I read the Bitcoin Standard, great book, Safety Anonymous, great book. But I mean, I don't mean to sound like full of myself here, but I pretty much got that case. Like if I'd have read it 2 or 3 years before, it would have been an incredible book for me. But because I'd done so many podcasts and stuff, I was like, oh, well, but there were still little nuggets in there that I hadn't considered. I mean, everybody who's sort of at the beginning of the journey, definitely read it if you've got the chance. But do
you think it's a good book for no coiners to read?
Yeah, it's approachable for people.
Yeah,
I think Jeff's book's probably a good start because it's not really a Bitcoin book.
Yep.
The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. That's a great book, and it's not really. It's more a technology book, and people can. It's really what's the word? Like readable. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you know what I mean. It's accessible for people.
Yeah.
Whereas the Bitcoin Standard is probably a bit more, and then there are other ones that are just very technical, and they'll lose me.
I mean, the good thing about the Bitcoin Standard is that the first sort of half of the book is just teaching you all about money, going back to the shells, the beads, the pebbles in Africa, and obviously Roman Empire, and then all the way up to the fiat currencies that we've got today. So even at that point, like I think that the first half of that especially, just you find that you think you know what money is
completely
before you find Bitcoin. Before you find Bitcoin, you think you know what money is. You think, yeah, it's this, blah blah blah. But then especially when I read the Bitcoin Standard and I was reading about it, you think, what? It's just, your mind is opened up in so many ways that you just think, you didn't even think this was possible before you go down that rabbit hole, you know.
But you instinctively know it to be true, right? When I read things, generally I'm sort of question, is that right? Is that right? But when you read something like that, you're going through going, oh yeah, that's right. It's common sense.
Yeah.
I think that's why it hits. It's common sense that none of us ever considered. You know, we're not never sitting there thinking about.
Well, I guess because we haven't had to. You know what I mean? Like we've had this old legacy system that, well, I don't want to say has worked, but for middle class kind of people, then it has. So yeah, it's just framing it not differently necessarily, but how money should be framed.
So what do you?
Yeah, definitely.
So what do you do now? What you read and you listen to podcasts? Is that how you learn, or what's?
Oh yeah. I mean,
And
like you
Twitter?
say on the and Twitter, yeah, obviously Twitter is one of the best resources for the learning and being part of the sort of being one of the plebs. Pretty much that's all that's really down to do. But what you're saying about Bitcoin and getting rich, you're always attracted to the thought of getting rich. That's what mainly I would admit. Like the first part of my journey was all about, let's get rich. Let's just secure my future, etc. But then, as the further you go down the rabbit hole, you start to realize that it's not all about getting rich for yourself. It's all about changing the world. And you look at El Salvador, and you mentioned in the last podcast that you've done that they're building 30 schools or something like that in El Salvador, and it's just all off profits of Bitcoin. And obviously building 30 schools is incredible, but as well as that, you're saving you are saving lives, because these El Salvadorans don't need to travel hundreds of thousands of miles, whatever, to get to the nearest Western Union or whatever to get their remittance payments. So it will save lives, not just in El Salvador, but everywhere. And the thought of that, being part of that, is it's amazing.
Makes you feel good about yourself, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and it's not like you're directly doing something, but you over in Scotland buying some Satoshis are directly helping a family in El Salvador secure their wealth.
Yeah,
crazy.
The thought
right?
of that, I mean, it's making a difference. I mean, a lot of people that I'm friends with or our family have said to me that, the UK, US, they'll never see a use case for Bitcoin. It doesn't have a use case, this, that, and the next thing. And then I start to talk to them about El Salvador, and you see it in their face just drops, because they've got no idea. They've absolutely no idea. And then when you put it, forward to them in plain English, they think, wow, this is next level stuff.
Yeah. I think you can get people on all angles. So we were together last night, Brendo and I think, and there was probably, I don't know, like 20 people there or something. And I think there was 6, maybe 7, I don't know, something of the people there who, for some reason or another, through the two of us, are owning Bitcoin.
No, that's through you.
Initially. Okay. Okay. But, and I'm like, well, firstly, it's a bit of a responsibility. I'm like, oh shit, I hope I'm right. But also you feel good about that, right? You're like looking around going,
100%.
These people are all fine.
You were surveying the plebs and just going, I built this.
Yeah, somebody did it for me. Like,
totally. Yeah.
But it does feel really good to go, oh, these people are going to be okay. And we can socialize with these people. And I know these people we have to go get somebody else now. It's a real nice feeling. I mean,
talking about the initial story with Salmon, we know each other in real life. We're great friends in real life. And we have orange pilled 99% of our friends. They're not as far down as a rabbit hole as him and I, but they've got, considerable, stack of Satoshis. And it's good to know that if we're right, and we are right, they're sorted. They are going to be fine, and you don't need to worry about anyone else. If they stack Bitcoin. I mean, some of them are doing DCA plans, and some of them are just they stacked once, and that was enough for them. Yeah. We were trying to encourage them to continue going down that rabbit hole. The hardest step always is that first buy, and then after that, it's all about the learning, and it's that sort of psychological thing. But not having to worry about your close family and also your friends is another part of that. That if things were to go, bonkers, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. And even as you say, if you can get somebody onto whatever it might be, like a £5 a week, month, doesn't matter, DCA plan with an exchange that you respect, then all of a sudden you're like, well, they're fine. You can just leave them be now, and because ultimately they're going to work out for themselves. Like once you've got a little bit of a stake in it, you'll pay more attention, and they will also have common sense and work out for themselves if they spend the time. Now they might not spend the time, but as long as they got a little bit of something. So how have you found? So you're 99%. You're doing better than either of us.
Oh, look, I think I've actually successfully orange pilled one person, and that's actually someone I've never met, but I play Xbox with or have played Xbox with for years.
To the point where they're a regular stack and they're really committed.
Yeah, and he went in pretty hard. So, but I've tried family, colleagues, and I haven't got the gift.
So what's your gift?
I think my gift is not the fact that they believe it; they do as they're told. That's probably the way to look at it. They've looked at us and see that we've done the research, and we've said to them, you guys need to get some of this Bitcoin, and they've went, oh, okay, and then got some,
Okay, that's super interesting. I think you just said they look at us. They didn't say they look at me. You said they look at us. So is there two of you going at people at the same time? So there's myself and Salmon. Yeah, we. But you actually try and orange pill somebody together?
Well, if we were ever together, whether it be night out or whatever, definitely we would not so much tag team and sort of go down their throat, but we would do it in a roundabout way where it plants the seed in their head, and they would go home. At least if they don't buy someone in the spot, they would go home thinking, what are they two guys on about?
Cornering people in a pub. It sounds like a very Scottish thing to do.
That's how we all meet our partners for life.
That's a usual Saturday night here.
But okay, I do think that is super interesting because I find it hard, just me, and I'm sure you just said you found it hard, just you. But even last night, to the people who we have already converted,
you have.
Okay, whatever. I actually found it. Last night was a different experience for me because we were both saying the same thing. Like people get more if there's like you could just be sort of one crazy man in the corner screaming Bitcoin or whatever. Like that guy, I love that guy. You know that guy that screams Bitcoin?
Frankie McDonald, is that his name?
Yeah. He's brilliant.
But if you're the crazy guy in the corner, people just look at you like the crazy guy in the corner, and everybody else points and laughs. But if there's two of you, it's harder to ignore when there's two.
Yeah, you look half as crazy.
You're half as crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's I like that.
Yeah.
And I would say that Salmon came to me first because me and him are very like-minded in the sense of, we don't just believe what we see on the TV. We're always looking to, the whole don't trust, verify. We were already there before Bitcoin. We were, you see something in the news, you think, nah, I'm not too sure about that. And you want to go find out the real answer. So we were already sort of there. So it was more of a case of, for me, the reason he came to me, we were like-minded, and he knew that if he could get me down that rabbit hole, it would be a non-starter. It would be right down it, and Bitcoin was for me. But for the rest of the guys, I would say that they're more, not so much interested in sort of politics and that sort of side of thing. They were more doing it for the simple fact of potential to get rich. But that's totally fine.
That's an okay place to start.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what I said. I started with it all. Is you look at Bitcoin, you could potentially get rich, then you realize what it can do for you. But for them, it's more about the sort of the monetary side of things. But I think that even at that point, it has allowed them to. Sorry, I say allowed them. It has woken them up a little bit to really what's going on with the world, really, because once you're in that Bitcoin space and you've got a lot of it, you realise that maybe this is the right thing to do, and this is the way forward compared to sort of traditional financial systems.
Yeah. Okay, that takes me two different ways. You can choose which way you want to go. You said there's a group, so you're a football guy, right? Soccer.
Okay.
We won't say soccer all day because there's two Scottish guys and there's one.
We can go between football or soccer. I don't mind.
I do, so it's not okay.
Is this a part I'll walk out for half an hour?
No. I think it's quite interesting, but even for you. But so there's two things. You said there's a group of guys. So football's quite a. Like, are you part of a? You follow a team and you go regularly, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, season ticket holder for a team called St Johnston, and they're my local team. And there's a group of us within. So not all of my friend group are St Johnston fans. There's some Celtic and Rangers fans. Obviously, two biggest teams in in Scotland. But there is 2 or 3 of us that are St Johnstone fans. We go regularly, and I would say that the ones that I go with they do own Bitcoin, so they are all safe as well.
Yeah, right. So are you like you see a season ticket holder? You go on the bus and you go to away games and all that kind of stuff. Are you that kind of a supporter?
The ones that I can, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, due to restrictions, vaccinations, etc., there's certain games I'm now not allowed to go to. Not to get too controversial and political, but in a normal world, yes, definitely, I would be a sort of a home and away fan.
Yeah. Okay. So that's quite so for Brendo's. Culturally in Scotland, you have Scotland. Football is a really big thing in Scotland, right?
And stabbings at football games.
No, maybe outside the ground, but it's at least outside the ground now. But so St Johnstone are what? So I'm sitting here. Sorry, let's for everybody. I'm sitting here wearing an Aberdeen shirt, so that's going to turn most people off our podcast straight away.
Turn me off.
What's that?
It's turn me off.
So.
It's a horrible shirt as well. So,
but I'm making it look great, right?
Yeah, you look good in it, but the shirt's no.
Yeah. But in Scotland, football is really important. So we have, and so there are 2 teams, Rangers and Celtic, that everybody are aware of. The rest of us generally hate those. Everybody, all other supporters, they just basically don't like those 2.
Is that because they're the most successful teams? Generally?
Well, so Celtic, I don't know, and so this is a Bitcoin podcast, but I want to go this way for this one, right? So Celtic will hold 65,000 seats or something like that. Rangers, I think, is about 55,000.
Yeah, roughly around about that.
Something like that, mate. And then beyond that, so as an Aberdeen fan, well, then you'll go down to like sort of Hearts and Hibs and Aberdeen with kind of supporters. And then St Johnstone will be sort of mid-tier of the top league, somewhere in there. Is that fair? They've outperformed. I know you're saying they have overperformed the last couple of years.
I'm ready just to jump in there. But yeah, no, like traditionally, St Johnstone are sort of a yo-yo club. They would bounce between the top league and the sort of second tier in Scotland as they please. But in the last sort of, I want to say 15 years, we've been outperformed incredibly. But yeah, Hats is right that's roughly about as is with all the teams in Scotland.
But there is it is a case where like there hasn't been Rangers and Celtic win the league. That's it. That's the. I mean, this season there's a half a chance, but generally Rangers and Celtic just will win the league always, right? So there's not even a competition. It's not even a competition, and it's purely financial. You cannot. And people will say, oh, you could try harder against, or you could do this again, but you can't. You can't compete against them financially. So that takes us to the money, right? Now there will always be big and there will always be small. That there's big cities and small cities and little towns that have clubs. So you can't expect your little town to go beat Brazil. That's never going to happen. But if you could level the financial playing field, I think things could change dramatically. Right?
So in Australia, with say rugby league, there's a salary cap. Do they not do that?
No.
Okay.
There is a thing called financial fair play rules, but they don't really apply in Scotland. So because of the game's not. I mean, so Scottish football is small compared. Everybody knows about the English Premier League. People all around the world support like Man United or Man City or Arsenal or Chelsea or whoever it might be. That applies a little bit to Rangers and Celtic, I guess, but the rest of us, not really. I'm like probably the only guy in Australia wearing an Aberdeen shirt right now, right? So maybe the world, right? But all I'm thinking is, if a team were to take a chunk of their balance sheet and put it into Bitcoin, just to store, doing nothing else, they could change everything, right? If St Johnstone had, let's say St Johnstone got £1 million in the bank. I no idea what the numbers would be. Let's say that's £1 million, right? Let's say they chucked 200 grand into Bitcoin today, and it wasn't their operating cash; it was just their savings or whatever, as a football club savings, and they had it sitting there, and if they never had to touch it and just left it, in 5 years' time, St Johnstone could, in theory, be the biggest team in Scotland. Now, they would never have. It's in a city called Scotland, so it's not a big city, nice city, but not a big city. So it's never going to be a hugely supported club, but it could change everything. And this applies to all sports, all teams, and particularly the smaller ones. Like if you could sit some of your money, your balance sheet in Bitcoin, and just basically become a hodler, a club hodler, it could change everything. Do you think? You ever considered that, Haggis?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I think you're absolutely spot on. If the powers that be at St Johnstone decided that they were looking to allocate a little bit of their portfolio or whatever, football clubs are usually run by businessmen, so they might have adventures outside of a football club. If they were to take their portfolio in general, sit it on the balance sheet, get some Bitcoin on it, it would totally change the landscape of football in general. I mean, especially Scottish football, that the way it has been for the last few years in terms of money, it's not able to compete with the English Premier League or any other of the top flight leagues around the world. It's not even coming close. You can see that with European results and stuff like that. But especially for a team like St Johnstone, if we decided to do that and we were to hodl for 10 years, it would not just totally change the landscape, but it would allow the club to survive. I mean, a little bit of history. I mean, back in sort of 60s and 70s, St Johnstone nearly went bankrupt before the current owner came in. And we're the sort of team that we don't make a lot of profit usually. And one wrong financial move could lead the club to essentially out of existence. But if you've obviously got willing to take that risk with Bitcoin,
nobody buys St Johnstone with a view of making a fortune. That's not going to happen, right? They're supporters themselves, right? Clubs.
Yeah, especially clubs of St Johnstone's size, even down in England, no one buys the club looking to turn it into some giant, because it's just not going to be possible, really.
So it's a passion project more than anything for somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Hatch, you'll know the new owners at Aberdeen, the American owners. What's the sort of turnaround been for them in terms of sort of financial backing with the club?
So they're quite interesting in a way. Oh, maybe just to me, but so Dave Cormack, the guy who runs Aberdeen now, is from Aberdeen, but he's a man who left Aberdeen, went to America, and made his money in IT software. And then he came back onto the board a few years back, and now he is whatever you call him, chief executive or whatever. What does he call himself? Chief executive, I guess he calls himself. And he's the man financing everything now. Now, not to make this about a Scottish football podcast, there are people like that all over in all sports all over the world, and they are financing it, and they've had a really difficult time in the last 18 months because of COVID, because their main income stream is, well, if you don't have the TV income stream, which smaller teams don't really, their main income stream is people coming through the gate. And if nobody comes through the gate, everybody's taking a massive loss. So they're just having to sustain it. And particularly which is, maybe it's okay on these, Man Cities of the world, where they're just owned by, a sheikh or whatever it might be, who has endless pots of cash. But if you're just a guy on a passion project, then you're taking the hit every single day, and it's difficult. So they're maybe looking at it a little bit differently. He comes with a bit of an American thought process, much more commercial than Aberdeen ever were before. So that's quite interesting, and I think he's quite looking at it as a longer term project. So I'd love it if it was my team who was the one, because they're prepared to think outside the box a little bit, who went, yeah, let's just put some Bitcoin in the balance sheet. Of course I would love it. We might start winning something, but the point is, somebody's going to do it, right? Somebody is, because in the last 3 days, 3 mayors in America have said they're going to take their salary in Bitcoin.
What's that about? I mean, I know what it's about, but they're all mayors.
Well, so that Suarez in Miami said he was going to take his next paycheck in Bitcoin,
and then
the new fella up at Eric, what's his name?
Maybe
anyway,
in New
York, as he just came back. He was just being poking a finger, say, well, I'm taking my next 3 paychecks in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So because all those businesses have left New York and headed to Miami, and then somebody else somewhere. Who was that?
Saying it was the Tampa Bay mayor as well has decided to take their salary in Bitcoin as well. It's another one. Tampa has done it, but
so that is happening there, right? And I understand why it's happening in the States first. It's going to happen everywhere, and if you're first, in fact, you don't even have to be first. You just don't want to be last, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, you're talking about.
Go on, mate.
Yeah, you're just talking about like the teams being the first. There is football teams that hold it on their balance sheet. PSV done it a few months ago. I'm sure they signed some sponsorship deal that was going to get fully paid in Bitcoin, and they've decided that they're going to essentially hodl it on their balance sheet and see where it goes. So obviously PSV and the Netherlands, they're a massive team. So I suppose they can afford to take that sort of hit if it doesn't go well. But the up and down, the volatility, this, that, the next thing. There's a couple other ones like if you remember last season, Watford had the Bitcoin logo on their strip, the home chop. They had it on their sleeve.
Yeah.
So like even football teams are aware that it exists and it is something that they can hold. So, and most of the people in charge of, even St Johnstone, you talk about Dave Cormack, the chairman, Steve Brown at St Johnstone, they are businessmen. They're not stupid.
Yeah.
They will have a lot of cash reserves or a lot of assets. And I know that Steve Brown's background is mainly housing. He built his housing empire. I'm sure he was an electrician and stuff like that as well. But they're going to have a portfolio of either cash or assets that are traditional, and they are going to be melting exactly the same way as any average person's cash is going to be, along with inflation. So they're going to be looking to stay rich. And
yes. So
it's only a matter of time,
So it's probably the same as everybody else. Firstly, like take the Michael Saylor example. He didn't put it on. He didn't buy with MicroStrategy first. He bought with his own money first.
Yeah.
Right. So why wouldn't that be the case for Dave Cormack, or what's the guy's name at St Johnstone? Stephen Brown? Is it Steve Brown?
Steve Brown. Yeah, Steve Brown is the chairman at St Johnstone.
So that's probably logical too, then, isn't it? Because it's going to be easier. Like if you're just doing it with your own money, you don't have to convince anybody. But if you've got a board to convince, it's harder. So that's just logical. I just think that's logical, and somebody's going to do it. And if anybody's listening and they've got any sort of influence at their local sports club, football, whatever your thing is, if you can be the first, and money is an issue, which is an issue for everyone. If you could convince your, small board or whatever to put just a small percentage of their reserves into Bitcoin, it could change your local club, local town, local everything. I mean, I think this is massive, and I'd love to see. Like, I don't know about yourself, mate. As a Scottish guy, you always have this. I have a chip on my shoulder, right? Because I'm an underdog guy. I will always support the underdog. It's going to be a problem for me when Bitcoin owns everything.
That's a bit of an Australian thing as well.
Yeah. And I'll always support the underdog, and I'd love to see some little clubs, be it mine or be it yours or be it anyone's, like to all of a sudden have a chance again in this commercial world where basically if you're not a billionaire, you can't win anything anymore. That's not sport. That's not sport to me. That's just like, I don't know.
It's big business.
Just big business. Yeah, that's all it is. It's not.
Yeah, that's just a bunch of rich guys' little game. That's all that is. That's like you talk about, the Mansours of Man City and Abramovich, Chelsea, etc. That they've had the monopoly. They are the two richest clubs in England and stuff like that. And
now Newcastle
teams, Newcastle as well with the is it Saudi or Qatar? They've been taken over there or something like that.
Yes, it's Saudi Arabia, I think.
I think it's Saudi, yeah.
So they've just been taken over by somebody who has 10 times the amount of money that Man City.
Oh, wow!
Which is unbelievable, right?
Yeah, when you think about that, it's just crazy. You can't even think about that in your head. You can't picture trillions of dollars in your head. You just can't do it
enough. I mean,
no way. I mean, these people just constantly make money. But on the other hand of it is that it wouldn't surprise me at all if they held some Bitcoin. Because again, these aren't stupid people. Whether they make their money from as simple as houses or they've made their money from oil, they will know the ins and outs of business. And if they would come out and say, we personally own a little bit of Bitcoin, or their company or whatever own Bitcoin, whether they would do that or not. But it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't own it, because they are intelligent people, and it would be a no-brainer essentially.
Well, even if it's just a 1% hedge, a 1%.
I mean, a 1% hedge to them is still a massive amount of money, because these guys are trillionaires, you know. So, like you say, 1% would be to them pocket change, but to us, it would be massive.
And to the market cap of Bitcoin, it would be massive too for everyone, including the family in El Salvador. Going back,
exactly. So
completing that loop. If you look at the shirts of English Premiership clubs, that'd be the richest league in the world, and it's not always been the case, but it certainly would be the case just now. The biggest leagues, football-wise, for Brendo's perspective, would be England, Spain, Germany, I would guess, and France a little because there's some big money in France. But all of those shirts, or not all of the shirts, but a lot of the shirts are sponsored by betting companies, right?
Well, I know that. Yeah, I mean, Southampton are sportsbet.io. They're a gambling company, but their sportsbet.io has a Bitcoin logo on it on the front of their shirt.
Is that something because McCormick's talked about before, isn't it?
He does. I think McCormack is sponsored by Sportsbet.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. I see, like, when I watch the Premier League on the TV, I can sometimes always look out for Southampton because I know that they're sponsored by them and on their shirt is a Bitcoin logo. So I always point out to friends or family, or don't really talk to them about it, obviously Sportsbet, but I say, look, there you go, there's a Bitcoin logo on a Premier League team. And it was the same with Watford last year when they had it on their sleeve, just always to point it out to people. And even at that point, the visual of seeing that logo still plants a seed for people.
It does.
They think, oh, what's that,
It just gives every little thing like that, just gives another little bit of legitimacy to Bitcoin, right? Every single thing. Totally. I don't know if you heard our last pod, we were talking about Commonwealth Bank in Australia. So Commonwealth is like, there's 4 big banks in Australia, really, and Commonwealth's the biggest one. And they have just said they're going to be allowing digital assets. They're going to be for their customers. So you don't need to create a new account. It's just going to be in your general Commonwealth Bank account. So that is the same thing, right? That's the same as the logo on a Southampton shirt. It's just people going, oh, well, if the Commonwealth say it's okay, if Southampton say it's okay, it must be okay.
Definitely.
They might not believe you and Salmon or me and Brendel, but they're going to believe Southampton and Commonwealth, right?
I always find it amazing too that if you see a Bitcoin logo on a shirt, there's no private backer paying, or well, not necessarily paying to have that on the shirt. You know what I mean? It's more the passion of either an owner or someone influential in a way, because obviously Bitcoin is entirely decentralized, whereas you've got all these other shit coins that are financially backed by.
So you
know what I mean? So they've got the coin to splash Times Square signs or whatever they need to do. You know what I mean? Unless you've got some kind of whale,
for example.
Yeah.
I think they have. Does Sportsbet have Bitcoin betting, or do they just have? What
I think I've never used the service, but I assume by the fact that the logo incorporates the Bitcoin logo, I assume they've got cryptocurrency betting. And obviously you mentioned that McCormack is sponsored by them, so I assume that they are at least aware of cryptocurrency.
Or they pay out in Bitcoin or something?
Maybe they pay in Bitcoin, or maybe they pay his sponsorship in Bitcoin, or maybe they just look and see McCormack's got a huge audience and we want his audience. Right? Maybe it's just that. But so there is a commercial gain to be had for them, or else they wouldn't do it. But you're right, though, it's still they are still it's like if you have a business and you run an advert for your business, you run an advert for your business. But if you have a business that has some connection, you've dialed into Bitcoin somehow, you're running an advert for your business and for Bitcoin, right? You are, because nobody else is running adverts for Bitcoin, because there is no exactly. Bitcoin, right? There's no Dave Cormack of Bitcoin.
I mean, that's the thing. If clubs not only held it on their balance sheet, but they actually also started accepting it at the kiosks for food and drink while you're at the games.
Right, there you go.
But again, that's another advertisement for Bitcoin. And as we both know, as we all know, the incentives that for Bitcoin to be accepted, most people at football games would go to the games, either spend cash or they will use their card, their credit card or their debit card, and whether it be Visa, MasterCard, whatever. But for clubs that have got card machines, they're paying a premium for every card transaction they do, whatever it is, 2% that they lose to Visa. And as a businessman running a football club, they won't want to be hemorrhaging 2% of every transaction that they do on match days. So what's the solution to that? Accept Bitcoin.
Sure, or your kit shop, your shop where you're selling shirts. Why not just have a Bitcoin terminal and accept Bitcoin as well as Visa? You don't have to. You don't have to give up Visa. You can run Visa as well.
Definitely not.
You can just
you talk about the incentives in terms of to use it, if the club can afford, if it's, say it's a football top, let's just make it easy, it's a football top and it costs $10 or £10. If you were to pay in Bitcoin, it would cost you 8. So there's obviously that incentive as well to use Bitcoin over traditional methods, and that will get people thinking that if I pay this certain way or using this, then I'll be getting it cheaper, and the club will obviously make that back in the long run. That difference of $2 or £2, the club will be regaining that along with the price increasing.
And you're always, if you are, if you're Hibernians, that's a club in Edinburgh. And
Can you speak English? You guys are every third word. I'm like, what the hell?
So you got Edinburgh has kind of 2 big clubs, and Hibs and Hearts. And
it sounds like 2 gangs, like the Cribs and Bloods.
That's pretty much what it is.
You've got to represent your team. That's pretty much what it is.
So, but if Hibs were, for example, they are constantly, and both ways, both these teams are constantly looking for a competitive advantage over each other, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
If one of them says, and even if it's just for the PR, even if you're not doing it for the 2%, because Hibs fans, let's say there's 10,000 of them, they would be like, we accept Bitcoin, you don't. That's what fans do.
Yeah.
So they're very tribal, and they'll grab hold of their thing and they'll shout about it. So I think there's a huge opportunity in there for some sports teams. Doesn't matter the sport, just to be first.
It's coming. You got that many athletes in the States that are like, only wanting to be paid in Bitcoin or want a portion of their salary in Bitcoin.
Well, maybe that. Maybe it's a player. Maybe it's a player that says, "I only want to be paid in Bitcoin."
Yeah.
With the Southampton stuff, I know that the bonuses, so their player bonuses through the sportsbet.io sponsorship get paid a portion in Bitcoin.
There you go.
Oh wow.
So if I think it is optional. They don't have to take it. If they want it in fiat, they can take it in fiat. But as a football player,
what's going to happen? Like, you got a squad of 20 guys or something, 30 guys, and 3 of them are taking it in Bitcoin and 27 of them are not. And the 3 guys, what are they doing in the changing room? They are rubbing it in the face of the other 27. They're going up to their face with their phone. Look what happened to me. Look what happened to me.
Fine. Okay, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, that's what
in the change room. All right, fine.
That's what they're doing. They're competitive people, right? If you're a sportsman or woman, you're a competitive person. You are in somebody's face and telling them every single moment of every single day.
Yeah,
right?
True.
So that's going to convert people. Now, when it tanks, I'm sure it'll go the other way. But yeah. All right.
Are we done with football now?
Okay, we'll leave football on.
I'm kidding. We can go.
What about? Okay, let's go politics then, shall we?
Yeah, that's fine. That's better.
Yeah, you can join in for this one.
Okay.
So, where did I go with this? Scotland. So here's, you see on Twitter, for Bitcoin Twitter, you see all the people putting up the Braveheart hodl meme. That bothers me. I've used it too, but it bothers me, right? Because here's what Scotland really is. Feel free to disagree, Haggis, right? There was an independence referendum in 2013. Scottish people were offered, do you want an independent country? And Scottish people voted no, right? So this hodl freedom loving Scottish meme, it's total bullshit, right? We voted no.
We bottled it. We absolutely bottled it. It's funny because I see that meme all the time, and I have used it as well. And part of the whole Haggis hodl thing, people follow you. You think, well, it's a Scottish guy. He's all about. He'll be into the Bitcoin because it's all about freedom. This, that, the next thing. Yeah. But obviously, like politics and stuff. I mean, this country goes back obviously thousands of years. We've been in the union with England, and we were given the chance. Not to get too controversial. Whether
get controversial if you like, mate. Say what you think.
Well, I mean, whether we were given a fair shot or not, you can go into the whole idea of like, did England want to elude us? Were they giving us a fair referendum? This, that, the next thing. And given that both of you will know as well as I do that politicians, you got to look at the lady in charge of Australia.
New Zealand
corruption. Is it New Zealand? Sorry, is it New Zealand? Yeah. Beg your pardon. Sorry, New Zealand. But just the corruption is from top to bottom. Not just in England, but I think lately my disassociation with politics due to Bitcoin, because you get that as well when you go down the rabbit hole. come to realise that politics in general is just all theatre. It doesn't matter whether you support green, blue, red, yellow, purple. You're still, excuse my language, you're still going to get fucked regardless, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a thing this morning with, I don't know what political meeting there is on at the moment, but it was like Boris.
COP26.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Boris Johnson, all these other ones wearing the mask for the photo opportunity. They take the photos, and they're still standing the same, as close as anything, and then they just take them off.
Theatre.
It is theatre.
That's all.
Yeah, and then you've got like
totally,
Elizabeth Warren, you know, anti-Bitcoin because of energy, and then hopping off private jets. Did you see that video? And then as she's walking towards the gate, she makes sure
the cameras
and she hides behind an aid or something.
Yeah.
It's like, piss off.
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more obvious as well. I think more and more people are starting to realize it. Like, so I left Scotland in 2012 or something. So it was just before the referendum. So I didn't do my part. So cards on the table. I was an Scottish independence guy, and not really for the reasons that I don't hate English people. The complete opposite, right? I'm just fed. I'm fed up. One, of somebody else telling the country I'm from what to do, and two, Scottish people not taking responsibility for their own actions. I want to be in control of everything, you know, my thing. And then if we screw it up, I want to be responsible for having screwed it up. Like, and that goes to nation state level as well, right? So I'm nothing to do with being anti-English. I really don't. And I think Scottish people can get dragged that way. And I'm sure I have been in the past, right? But it's nothing to do with being anti-English. And I think it's just to do with being pro what you are. And I mean, ultimately, I think countries are going to become less and less relevant.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. That's part of what you get sent down that Bitcoin rabbit hole. You realize that the idea of a nation state is just that. It's an idea. It's something that a social construct that this planet is, the humans have created, when really we are all part of the same group. We are all humans. Why does there need to be differences? Why do we need to be divided by made up lines drawn on a map? It's to mirror what you were saying, Hats, about independence. I totally agree with you, and I was exactly of the same opinion, and I wanted to be responsible for, my country's actions. If we'd done it well, you take the praise for that, and if we fucked up, then we fucked up. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think that now I would even bother to vote, because I know where we're going with Bitcoin.
Yeah. So
I know the end goal.
You're now removed to the point where, well, here's another thing. So in Australia, it's compulsory voting, right? You have to vote.
Is it?
If you don't vote, you have fined, right? You're not. I think that's as bad as it gets, a fine.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to pay the fine, obviously, so you have to vote. But I mean, you can go and spoil your paper if you want to.
That's the thing. I mean, the last election that I went to the voting booth and wrote "Buy Bitcoin" all over my.
Did you?
My ballot paper? Yeah. So it was a case where now I'm thinking, do I do that again, or do I just not bother to turn up? It's not compulsory here, but I think maybe I'll just go do that again. So
it's not compulsory. Is it never been compulsory to vote?
No, well, not in my lifetime.
No.
Certainly.
Wow.
But,
okay.
Not in mine either.
I actually don't believe in compulsory voting. I think it would be good if everybody did vote, but I don't believe in compulsory voting. Like, I would like people to be interested enough and follow the discussion enough, and then go and vote for whatever it is that they think is the right thing. But
then,
if you look at the, sorry, on you go, Brendan.
All I was going to say is, if you don't have compulsory voting, like say in the States, you've got all the people that are just entirely apathetic, aren't going to bother. They don't give a shit.
Well, no,
and it's the ones that are more extreme that really push for. I mean, you're getting a segment of both sides, I suppose. But I don't know. I don't have a problem with compulsory voting.
I mean, if you look at the divide in Scotland, if you ever looked at a political map of Scotland, Hats, you'll be aware of this. When you see the divide in a UK election, the bottom half of England is blue for the Tories, Conservatives, with every sort of city is red with Labour, and then you come up to Scotland and near enough every single seat is yellow with SNP, Scottish National Party votes. So that even in the Brexit referendum to come out of the EU, the divide between England was, I'm sure that like 80% of England or whatever it was looked like it was voting to leave, and the whole of Scotland was like voting to remain. So even in the going back to that the political ideologies of Scotland and England and Wales and Northern Ireland as well are just totally different.
They are.
Both sit at different ends of the spectrum. Yeah,
definitely true. So as a Scottish person, you could kind of vote your whole life and never get never have a prime minister that is somebody that you wanted. Like never. Like in Australia, at least now and again, it would go between red and blue.
Yeah.
And so sometimes if you're a red and you're a blue.
It often does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at some point, not that I'm saying anybody should be a red or blue, but I'm just, if your entire life, the person that you vote for has no chance of getting in, like, why do you, of course people are disillusioned with that. Of course they are. And that's what puts the chip on the shoulder of the Scottish person, right? And it's not okay. And Scottish people, frankly, can take it far too far sometimes.
So can I clarify? So Scotland for Brexit voted to stay in.
No, in the independence referendum, Scotland voted to stay as part of the United Kingdom, right? Yes. So it was like, what was it, Haggis, like 50, 55, 45 maybe?
Something. I mean, it was
very
the majority were voting to remain. Yeah, yes. I think the majority were voting to remain in Scotland.
And what year? When was that? What year
was like 13? I think it was September 13.
Yep.
Sorry, but this is independence. Sorry, or
independence.
That was
Brexit.
independence.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, I was saying about Brexit. Yeah, independence was roughly 45, 55. You were right in that. Sorry, beg your pardon.
Sorry, maybe I missaid there. And then on the Brexit, but on the Brexit side, that was a UK-wide vote. So Scotland didn't have a vote as Scotland; it was a UK vote. So Scotland and Ireland, Northern Ireland, both voted to stay within the EU. Wales, I think, narrowly voted to leave, and England quite heavily voted to leave. So, but because of the population difference, there's like England's like 10 times bigger than Scotland. So the Scottish vote essentially doesn't really matter. And we do what the big vote says. Yeah. So again, all these Scottish people and a lot of English people too were taken out of, and basically that was the Brexit vote was sold as to Scottish people as the only way you can stay part of the the independence vote was the only way you can stay part of the EU is to stay part of the Union. Right. Yeah. And then along came the Union, then along came the Brexit vote, and then you all voted to leave. Yeah. It's like, hang on a second, like that was the only way we were allowed to stay part of.
And what's that, a 5-year difference? Or when was the Brexit? Like 2017 or
Brexit?
2018?
It's been like 3 years. 16, 16, something like that.
Yeah. So that's got to be talking about it for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute shambles. I mean, like you say, it's just on back on the topic about getting a fair vote. I know we were lied to. Scottish people were lied to. That's the bottom line in terms of what they were trying to vote for in 2000 for the independence.
All people,
I feel like they were.
You're absolutely correct, but I would say all people were lied to. English people.
Yeah, sorry, beg your pardon. Yeah, people were lied to. I mean, even like politics in general, it doesn't matter. This isn't just a problem that affects Scotland. This is politics everywhere. Everyone is lied to in the world. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, with that, especially at that point, I think that's when it certainly did get interesting, with Scotland being essentially dragged out against its will. And ever since then, I know, like for me personally, that's when the sort of disassociation started to begin of really what is actually going on here, you know.
But previously there was no outlet, right? So Scottish people just got angry, and we were just seen as these angry people from the north, right? And because that's what we were, right? Frankly, that's, so, but now there's this other thing, and we can all go, well, you can go to the ballot box and write buy Bitcoin and walk out and with a smile on your face. You can.
Yeah.
There's this release valve, and you can go be, whatever it is you want to be. You live wherever you like in the world, and be. I
mean, normies will think that's counterproductive. Like I remember when I told that story to other people, and they say, "Oh, you should never waste your vote. You should always vote, and it does count." But like you say, we all know where it's going, and it's that freedom to just decide, Scotland, you've been great to me, but I want to go live in, I don't know, let's just say Poland or whatever, just because they're very friendly for Bitcoiners, or whatever. It doesn't need to be Poland. It could be any nation where they're accepting Bitcoiners, and at that point, even if you go as far as the whole Citadel sort of a theory and idea, where it won't even be countries or nations, it'll be just areas where it'll be land that's owned by Bitcoiners, and everyone around you is a Bitcoiner. You know,
and all that's going to matter in the future is that you're respected if you provide a product or service that people value because they'll pay for it in Bitcoin, right? Does not matter. Doesn't matter where in the world you live. Eventually, that's where we're hoping to get to, right? Eventually, you're going to get to a point where if you're not providing a product or service that people value, you're going to get poorer. So your incentive is to go think of something that you could do for other people, go help them, and they'll pay you in Bitcoin. And there's no rich person at the top can just take the money easily at the top from the free money printer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as we all know. I mean, I think I said, like, especially now with COVID, that this nation, I wouldn't say the UK is a nation full of sort of tame people. We are obviously a very strong and opinionated nation, but I think what I've felt still, obviously being in Scotland, is that people are now more aware than ever of politics. I would hear stories of grandparents, etc., where they would just, their generation would trust the government. You would trust what you hear on the TV, and that was that. You done your job, and you ate your dinner, and you go to sleep. But now it's a case that more people are switched on with politics more than ever now, and people are finally waking up and realizing that they are getting screwed.
Yeah.
Every election comes and goes. Doesn't matter who is in charge, you're getting screwed. You will be getting screwed.
And people are, sorry, mate.
I was just going to say, and increasingly, I think you are getting an emergence of single issue voters, and not just I'm a Labor guy, you know what I mean? Because that's what my dad did or mum did.
I never understood that. Well, we're a Labor family. I was like, what if somebody decided that we're going to murder everybody? You're still a Labor family.
Well, it's like if you're a Ford or a Holden car guy, you know what I mean? It's just like
your team. I mean, don't change your team. I'm never going to be a St. John's guy.
Here we go. Back to bloody football.
Back to football. Any chance?
Clearly, I'm wrong there. Like, and that's actually the wrong attitude. If my this pains me to say it, but like if my team became this bad, thing for society, I should be changing my team, right? I mean, I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
I'm a Bitcoin Aberdeen guy, but I should. I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, for me especially, like, even if I hadn't have found Bitcoin, I'm not vaccinated. I've not opted to take the vaccine, and there's now certain things I can't do. Whether I wanted to go to a nightclub, I can't do that. There are certain football stadiums that I'm now not able to attend, and that's a policy that's been brought in by the powers that be. The SNP are in charge of Scotland. So even if I hadn't found Bitcoin, I think I would still look at that and think, do I really want to vote for a party that's actually oppressing me for my choice, for my views? I don't think so, regardless of my opinion on independence, regardless of any fantastic policy they may have. I would say, no, I can't vote for someone that's oppressing me, even though I have voted for them many, many years in the past.
Yeah. Have they put a time frame on that? So like over here, I think they've just extended it now to like mid-December.
In New South Wales.
Oh, New South Wales, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So unvaccinated can't do this, that, and the other. Or double vax can't do this, that, and the other. Initially it was December 1st, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, this is all going to stop by then, but they've extended it to mid-December. So it's the same kind of thing there. They've gone, all right, this period of time, you can't do this to incentivize you, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, they were
coerce. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, when they came out and said it, they didn't say really it was to stop the spread. It was to drive up the uptake in vaccinations. They were totally, playing with it. And the fact that people at that point were just, not getting up in arms baffles me. But they said they were reviewing it on a 3-week period. And I think the first review has just been. And one of the health ministers came out and said there is no evidence to suggest that the vaccine mandate or vaccine certification, whatever official name is actually making a difference. So what their response to that is they're now looking to potentially bring it into restaurants, cafes and gyms to see if that's going to make a difference.
So here's a thing that's not working. We're going to do more of it. Is that basically?
We're going to do more of it to see if it'll make a difference in other places. And it's just...
But the thing is,
it's all coordinated.
The anti-vaxxers, the people that don't want to be vaccinated, are making that choice for their own health. They're not going to put their health on the line to go, oh shit, I'd really want to go to a cafe in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, the only thing is, sorry, I've got friends that have had to stop work. I've got one guy who's really grappling with it at the moment because he needs to work, and he's at a point where, at his wit's end, that I think he's going to go and get it done, and that's just unfair.
So that, yeah, I mean, and people think it's really inflammatory, but if you read point 1 of the Nuremberg Code, it is really inflammatory. I understand that, and I'm not belittling what happened back then at all. But if you read point 1 of the Nuremberg Code, I'd encourage everybody to go read it. It's all about coercion. Point one of the Nuremberg Code is about coercion, right? And being able to make a freedom of choice. I don't care whether somebody gets a vaccine or not. Like, get the vaccine if you want to get the vaccine. Don't get the vaccine if you don't get the vaccine. But don't segregate people based on their decisions. It's disgusting. Like,
I mean, it's the first time we have ever discriminated people based on health. When have we ever done that? As I say, first time in modern times in the last sort of 20, 30 years, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. The thought of it is crazy. And the fact that I'm lucky because here it's not as bad, it still exists. But you look at Europe, like I had a family member that traveled to Europe. He went to Austria and you can't do anything without proving your vaccination. He tried to go to whatever the equivalent of Starbucks or Costa is. It was a local one. And the lady at the door was standing there, "Oh, can I see your COVID certification?" And you just think, wow, if I went with you, I wouldn't have even been able to sit at that table and have a coffee with you.
That's exactly what we have. That's exactly what we have here now too. Exactly.
Yeah.
The only things you can do are
takeaway. You can do takeaway stuff.
Anything that's considered
a transaction.
No, yeah. Well, anything you can be. You're not like, if you're going to takeaway coffee, you can grab a takeaway. You can go to the servo, the garage, and get your fuel. You can go to the supermarket, but you have to check in. But anything, you can't go in a shop. You can't travel. You can't all sorts. You just can't do it.
Papers, please.
Papers, please. That's exactly what's happening.
It's exactly as it is. And it comes back to the whole sort of thing is that, are the vaccines effective? If the answer is yes, then the vaccine passports are pointless. If the answer to the question is no, the vaccine passports are still pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. It's not hard.
Yeah.
And it is, I think it is all, rehearsed, and all the governments, I think, for the first time ever, are all communicating with each other to, oppress a certain member of society.
So I think I've said this before, I used to work for the Scottish government, right? I was a procurement guy. I worked there for 12 years, right? So I wasn't a minister and like that kind of a thing. I was an administrative guy. But I believe, but work directly with ministers, right? And I firmly believe that the vast majority of people who get into that job do so with the best of intentions. I do. I believe that because I know the people. I also believe that most of them are not competent. I believe that some of them are very competent, but a lot of them are not that competent. And that high-level civil servants and ministers, they're just people, right? We all just people. The guy that used to sit next to in chemistry at school, he might be a minister now, and he might have been a tool then, and he's a tool now. Or he might have been a genius then, and he's a genius now, right?
Yeah.
I firmly believe that most people get into it for the right reasons, but the system itself does not allow people to critically think
or go
against the grain.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got to toe the party line generally.
I know people, really good people who are, been in that job been in those, and they're still there, fighting that fight, trying their best. And I also know people who have given up and are still there, but because they feel like they can't do anything else. They feel like they have to be there because get 3 kids and a mortgage to pay. But people, I do believe people go in with the best of intentions. I just think that the system itself just works against you constantly, and eventually you either, more power to the people who fight it for their whole careers. I didn't have that in me. I literally was getting depressed because of it. But the ones, and I feel bad for the people who've just kind of given up. But it's just, I don't know. We now have something else. If somebody feels like I felt then, and they're listening to this, there's an alternative, and you don't have to give up your job to take part. You could just take £5, $5, £5 a day, a week, a month, or a year, and just stack and just secure yourself some in another way, and secure your family in another way.
It's that I like the concept of, if you put your first buy, you put $50 in or $100 in to Bitcoin, you're buying yourself an education, because you are then invested in it, and you're more likely to actually investigate or find out a little bit more about it. Not necessarily, but I think a lot of the time.
Yeah, if you have a little bit of skin in the game, you're going to pay more attention.
Yeah.
You start paying attention, you start to learn. It's common sense, ultimately. Hopefully, if you find, there's a whole manner of really, really rubbish information out there too.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're, but there's some great quality, books and podcasts, and it's seeping into culture everywhere now. If, you listen, sports stars or even influencers, which I can't, can't stand the thought of that. But some of them are actually speaking, interesting thoughts. So,
yeah, it is that different way, and finding just a different way of doing things. The traditional way of life is you go through your education, your school or homeschool, or whatever you do. And I know when Princey was on the first episode, he was talking a lot about homeschooling. And you do that, and then you go to work, and then you work, you knock your pan in for the rest of your days until you hopefully save up enough money to retire at 65 or whatever retirement age it may be. But now it is, with Bitcoin, it is that different way of, I don't need to knock my pan in until I'm 65. I don't need to worry about putting food on the table. I don't need to worry about getting the house paid off or anything like that. You can just, like you say, even allocating $10, £10 a day, a month, whatever, to just essentially stack your freedom, to get yourself out of that ball and chain of either the 9 to 5 or whatever role, to get yourself out of the ball and chains and the handcuffs that the government put on you, because the government obviously want to keep you small. They want to keep you, what's the word? They want to keep you in your place. They don't want you rising up. They want to keep you controlled. Yeah, reliant on the government. And that's another thing with Bitcoin. You see so many of the plebs on Bitcoin Twitter talking about not having the reliance on traditional supermarkets, becoming self-sovereign, becoming self-sufficient, growing your own veg, supporting your local butchers or anything like that. So I definitely think it opens a massive, massive door for the whole idea of that self-sovereign man. And as well as it changing the lives and saving lives of people in El Salvador, it will change our lives. We are lucky in the position we're in, because we are sort of the first world countries. We are, we are lucky. Even though we moan about things that happen in our lives, we still are lucky. We have a roof over our heads. We have central heating. We have beds to sleep in.
Yeah.
But for these people in El Salvador, they might not have that. These people in Venezuela, they might not have that. And Bitcoin allows them that chance to potentially get that at some point in their lives. And like you say, we said at the start of the podcast, being part of that and the thought of that happening, it fills you with so much happiness and joy.
I've just got so much hope for the little, like I said before, like I'm always going to support the underdog. So I think some of these underdogs are going to leapfrog some of the elites, right? It's great. It's a great thing.
Yeah. So
awesome.
the first countries that get Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they could, well, they will not. I say they could, they will. The conviction is strong that they will become potentially world leaders or massive influences in the future. Because the way the traditional financial system, things cannot go on the way it is. The monopoly, every currency has hyperinflated. Every single fiat currency has hyperinflated. What makes the pound, the dollar, the yen any different? There is no difference. It was the downfall of Rome was the money. And the Roman Empire was, you could argue, one of the best empires that the world has ever seen. So how is America exempt from that? It's not. It will go exactly the same way.
Yeah, and if you don't believe, if anyone's out there not believing what Haggis is saying, go and look at pricetonbitcoin.com and look at they measure things by the day, the week, the month, the year, 5 years, and look at all the currencies and look at the other. And it's not just currencies; it's all sorts of commodities and like it's, I don't know, a hamburger or something, all sorts of comparisons, and like just look at it. Don't take our word for it. Go and look at it, and just see what your currency has done over the last, well, basically your entire life. However, it doesn't matter.
I mean, the Great British Pound since inception has lost 98.7% of its value since inception. That says it all. That is all you need to know to get yourself down that Bitcoin rabbit hole.
Yes.
And I couldn't even imagine what it is for the euro. I mean, the euro was a failed currency, even before it started. And I can't imagine what the American dollar, Canadian dollar, Australian dollar would be like in terms of lost value since it got created.
Yeah. It's all right. Lighter or not? Let's. Is there anything else you want to touch on, mate? Before I've got one other thing I want to, but you go for it if there's anything else.
No, nothing that comes to mind, to be honest. What's the last thing you've got, Hats?
I want you to convince everybody why they should eat haggis.
Haggis. Hang on, does he eat haggis? Do you eat haggis?
Haggis is beautiful. It's one of the best.
Let's tell everybody. So hang on, I just had to. Well, I do kind of roughly know, but so in haggis is what we just sort of call it a spicy sausage, I suppose, for anybody who doesn't know. But it's got liver, heart, and lungs.
If I didn't want to let the person know, the person was a bit squeamish, I would say it's a spicy sausage. But if they really wanted to know, it's basically all the parts of a sheep that you really shouldn't be eating, like lung and intestine and all sorts of just nasty stuff put together with spices and salt and some stock. And it's not, I'm sure it's in a sheep's stomach. The actual casing is a sheep's stomach.
Oh, the lining of the haggis,
and that's haggis.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely beautiful. It's so nice.
Absolutely vile,
it's
but
spectacular.
But I think, what's the Scottish Day or something where you've got treats?
Scottish Day, we have treats. St Andrew's Day, maybe, or Burns Night.
Burns Night.
Burns Night.
Yeah. I remember coming over here. The first time I ever tried haggis, you gave me, I think, a little balls or something.
Oh, so Burns Night and Australia Day are one day after the other.
I don't know. I just remember you saying something about come over for Burns Night. I'm like, what is that? Is that a board game or?
Burns was a poet. So
but I'm sure they were little balls, weren't they? Little.
Oh yeah, well you can get it in all sorts. So it usually comes in a sort of big egg shape, massive egg,
which is in the stomach,
which is the sheep's stomach lining with the spicy sausage inside.
Yeah, but like a bit into it, it's dark, like quite black, but it was like, I'll admit it was tasty.
There you go.
And I had a few actually.
So haggis maximalist, definitely. Mate, do you want to send anybody?
Haggis maximalist, definitely.
Do you want to send anybody off anywhere, or is there any? Well, actually, first thing, is there anybody? Give a shout out to anybody who's helped you get to where you're up to just now, and then send anybody off to your Twitter or anywhere else you want to send them.
Well, I would probably have to give a shout out to my mate Salmon, because he really did set me on my journey. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't say I would never have discovered Bitcoin, but I wouldn't have gone down the route so quickly that I did. And if you want to see my stupid and ridiculous tweets from some random Scottish guy, the handle is @HaggisHoddle on Twitter. And give me a follow, and I'll be sure to follow you back as well.
Perfect, mate.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was great to have another Scottish guy and a bit of a Scottish perspective on. We're really keen to just, if where we can, obviously language barriers sometimes, and time barriers, but to have people from all over the place, just to get the perspective of people from everywhere, because this is for everyone.
That's right.
So, Matt, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you properly.
No problem.
And we'll chat again.
Thanks for having me on, gents. It's been brilliant.
All right. Thanks, Haggis.
All the best, guys. Cheers.
Hey guys, if you've made it this far, thanks so much for listening. The plan with the pod is to do sort of guests one week and myself and Brendo the other week, so hopefully that's working for you. If you don't like one of them, just listen to the one you do like. If you want a little bit more information from us, you can find it at bitcoin-first.com/learn.